Welcome to the very first episode of That 70's Renovation. My name is Dawson, and a few weeks ago I bought a new fixer-upper, and as you can tell, it's already been a crazy process, and I cannot wait to show you everything that's happened. Before we jump in, here is a little bit more about me. 2 years ago, I bought my very first house, the smokerhouse. The previous owners smoked inside for 20 plus years, and as you can imagine, that does a ton of damage to a home. I bought this house because it was in a really good neighborhood that I couldn't afford normally, but since it needed so much work and pretty much nobody else wanted it, I was able to get it in my price range. When a house has been smoked in, pretty much everything needs to be either replaced, fixed, or super deep cleaned, and I had never done anything like this before. I grew up with a pretty handy dad, but I had never renovated a house by myself before, so pretty much just every night after my 9-to-5 job, I would come home, try to work on this house, and spend my weekends learning how to do DIY projects and make a fixer-upper into a home. Somewhere along the way, I realized I just absolutely love doing these projects and figuring out how to create spaces. And I think I'm ready to do it again. So I packed up the smoker house, went home shopping, and found a super quirky 1970s fixer-upper that I cannot wait to renovate over the next few years and share the entire process with you. This house is a little bit older and smaller than the smoker house, but it has a ton of charm. I love this living room with the fireplace, beam, and archway, and there are no shortage of projects that I can do in this house. Go check out my previous video so you can see a tour of the whole house. My first project is going to be working on building a laundry room area in this corner of the garage. I think it'll be really helpful to kind of block all of that off so that it doesn't get dusty when I'm doing projects in here. Before I started on that laundry project, I needed just a few days so that I could unpack, get the old house ready for the new people who will live there, and then deal with some weird quirks at the new house. The first being that there was absolutely no internet. I went to plug in all of my equipment and the wires just literally fell out of the wall, so I had a technician come out and they said, quote, "Everything is missing," so they had to start completely from scratch and run all new wires. The second little quirk I had to deal with was this really big tree that somebody planted right on the corner of the house. Thankfully, it hadn't done any damage to the foundation yet, but it was just a matter of time. So I got a company to come out and give me a quote, and next thing I know, they were removing the tree the same day, which I definitely wasn't planning on doing right away, but I guess I'm glad that it's getting taken care of and won't damage the house in the future. I haven't quite ironed out all the plans for what I want to do in this house, but here's what I'm thinking of doing in the kitchen when I get around to it one day. I would love to remove the soffits above the cabinets. I think that would just make it feel a little bit taller and more open, and then maybe I could even get taller cabinets as well with more storage. I am playing around with the idea of removing that pantry in the back corner, putting more cabinets and extending the countertop, and then maybe doing something fun on top of the countertop like a hutch or something that sits on it with an appliance garage inside. The previous owner replaced all of the lower cabinets but left the original uppers, and I would love just to get these all looking the same one day. Probably do a new color and new countertops as well. They did install the new lower cabinets on top of the tile, so I will have to remove all of the cabinets when I'm ready to install the new floors. So I think this will be a very big project that I need to plan out so I can have enough time to do all of these projects all at the same time. But I think it has some potential. Let me know if you have any ideas in the comments. I really do love this archway into the dining room, but it does need some help. It's got some weird flat spots in it, so that will be a fun little project figuring out how to fix that as well. The dining room floors are so weird. I cannot figure out why there is a rectangle of black squares off-centered in the room. It drives me crazy, so one day when I get new floors, I think it'll really help this room look a lot better. And maybe I would build a little coffee bar or something on that back wall so that I could get more storage as well. But again, let me know if you have any ideas for this dining room in the comments. I think it would look really good with a hanging light as well. My favorite room in the house is definitely the living room. I love the big fireplace, but unfortunately the built-ins on the side of the fireplace need some work. They either need to all be refinished or maybe just rebuilt in a new way. I haven't decided quite yet what I want to do, but I definitely want to try to keep that original character of the built-in look. The other tricky thing about the living room is I'm not quite sure where to put a TV. I could definitely put one on top of the fireplace mantle, but that would kind of be a big project because there's no power up there, so I'd have to figure out how to get an outlet into the brick. So right now I'm just putting the TV in my bedroom and setting the living room up kind of just as a hangout room. I put the couch on the big wall and then some chairs in front of the window. So it's a really good place to kind of have conversations and hang out for now. And I don't really watch that much TV anyway, so I'll just kind of do that in my room for the time being. Eventually, I'm gonna need to think about what furniture I actually wanna have in this space. I don't think this couch is quite big enough for the wall, and the chairs aren't really going well together, but it's definitely good for now, and I need to spend my money fixing up the rest of the house before I think about furniture. So it's definitely good for now, and I just love how open this room is between the kitchen, living room, and dining room. As you can tell by the state of this bedroom, the first week living here was really hard on me, going back and forth between the new and the old house and just getting everything ready to go for the new people who will be living at the smokerhouse. And I was just kind of in survival mode. So it felt really great the next weekend to spend some time unpacking the bedroom and just getting it ready to go. My biggest project in the new house is going to be reworking the primary bathroom, closet, and bedroom. It has a super funky layout right now with almost a micro bathroom, so I'm definitely going to be reworking some of the walls in here to kind of make the space flow better, but that is a really big project and I need some time to plan it out. So for now, I'm just kind of setting up the bedroom as best as I can, and I gotta tell you, it felt really good to have this room put together and just have a normal space to come back to at the end of the day. And if you're thinking about moving soon, that's definitely my biggest tip from this experience is focus on getting your bedroom set up first. The kitchen and the other rooms can wait. It just really does something when you have like a good space to come back to at the end of the night and get some good sleep. So that's my one little moving tip for you. I also do work remotely, so I needed to set up my office, and it felt really good to get this space semi put together so that I can focus a little bit better when I'm working. And after I got all of these 3 spaces set up, it was finally time to work on the garage. The original plan was to build a closet for the laundry machines in this corner of the garage, and that snowballed wildly out of control, and here's how. I started by doing a little demo of the laundry space. I took off these shelves that were absolutely covered in lint. There is a vent to the outside for the dryer, but it must not have been hooked up or something, so lint was literally splattered all over the walls in this corner as well, which I think is pretty unsafe. Above the new washer and dryer, I do plan on putting some cabinets, so I decided to take off all of this random old shelving and pieces of 2x4 that were nailed on here, which I can't quite figure out why they were there. And I also demoed this old pegboard system that was on this same wall. In between the laundry machines and the water heater, I'm planning on building a workbench, so I just wanted to get this whole area cleared. And this is where I started to notice that this project might be a little bit bigger than I planned. There are tons of holes in the wall, and apparently this is a drywall that looks like wood paneling. So if I wanted to patch all of these holes, it wouldn't look right because the patches would be completely smooth and there wouldn't be those vertical lines like there are in the rest of the drywall. The ceiling was made of a different material, but it looked like it had had some work done to it over the years, and I decided to just take a few days to kind of think about what I wanted to do here. And while I was thinking about it, I talked to my next door neighbor, and they told me that their garage ceiling recently fell down onto their cars. So after hearing that, I decided I should probably just replace all the drywall in the garage, and this project just got 10 times bigger. I picked up a bagster. This is basically a dumpster in a bag. It looks like an IKEA bag, and you can fill it up with construction debris, and then the company will come pick it up off of your driveway. It's really pretty cool. I ended up using 2 of them. To remove the drywall, I pretty much just used my hands. It was barely nailed onto the walls, and you could just touch it and it would come off in these really big sections, which was super easy just to walk straight out to the bagster and made the demo go pretty fast. I removed and cleaned up all of the drywall in 6 hours. Make sure you wear a very good dust or respirator mask when you are doing demo. You do not want to breathe in any of that dust or chemicals in the air during that process. I was super careful when I demoed around the breaker panel. I removed the cover so I could pull the drywall off, and then I put that cover back on so nothing would fly in there over the next few weeks while I'm working on this garage. Now for my favorite part of the process, removing the ceiling. I climbed up to the attic, I barely touched on it with my foot, and the hugest chunk of drywall fell down all at the same time. I definitely can see why this fell on my neighbor's car. They did not use screws when they installed the ceiling drywall, so over time the weight of the drywall just pulls on the nails they used to install it and eventually will fall out. So I'm glad I'm replacing this, but I am not looking forward to lifting up all of those pieces of drywall to screw them into the ceiling. And I'm definitely not looking forward to the process of smoothing out all of the joints with joint compound and doing all that sanding, but I'm not very good at it, so maybe this will be a good project to practice and kind of learn those skills before I have to do any projects like that inside the house. Once I got one side of the garage done, I had to move all the stuff to the other side to remove the rest of the drywall. I think I would rent a pod in the future so I could just put all the stuff from the garage in there and then not worry about moving it or getting it dusty or anything like that. I'm not gonna lie, after a week of all the stress that comes with moving, it felt really good to get to do some demo and just punch a few walls, pull out the drywall, and just get this project started. The walls were actually super easy to demo and clean up because they came out in such big chunks, but the ceiling crumbled into just a million little pieces, and then it also would hit the ground and explode. So by the time I would remove one half of the drywall ceiling, it would look like this, and that took forever to clean up by myself. I had to pick it up piece by piece, but I am still pretty proud of myself. I feel like 6 hours for all of the removal and cleanup is pretty good for one person working alone. And now I have a completely blank canvas to start working with in the garage. I can't put up any new drywall until I have all of the electrical changes made to the garage. In the meantime, there are quite a few little things I can do to stay busy until that's done. The first thing that I did was replacing this door into the inside of the house. Garage doors like this are supposed to be fireproof, and this old door, besides just being disgusting, was definitely not fireproof. My dad suggested that I install a pre-hung door. I've never installed a door before, and he said that would probably be the easiest option. So to start, I removed all of the trim around this doorway, and I had to go inside to do this. So the official start of the interior renovation has begun. And then I removed the frame out of the inside. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm gonna do about the door to the water heater. The other one was deteriorating, so I just ended up removing it as well, but I think I'm gonna have to build a custom door for that. We will see though. When I took out the frame, I also discovered there is some old linoleum that I think goes under the tile as well. So that's pretty quirky and weird, but seems on par for an old house. This is the pre-hung door that I picked up. It's crazy how much better it looks already than the old door that was here. And to install it, I just had to make sure that the opening was the right size for the frame and the door. And then unfortunately, the tile that was on that inside hallway was catching on part of the transition piece. So I had to get out a grinder and cut back this tile a little bit. I've never cut tile like this before, but it was actually pretty fast. I used a tile blade and then just sprayed some water on the area I was cutting, which helped keep the dust down quite a bit. It still was a very dusty process, and I had to make sure I was wearing my mask as well. And then I just used this little pro bar to help remove that piece of tile that I cut. I did cut the hole too big, so there is a big gap now in between the door and the tile, but it's totally fine because I'm replacing these tiles hopefully one day. The door is actually pretty hard to install, not because it's like a difficult process, but for me it just took an hour and a half to adjust everything. You need to make sure that it's level all the way around, and in order to do that you use these little wood shims, and this process just took forever for me to kind of figure out exactly where it needed shims and everything. But once you get it all set up in place exactly where you want it, I just screwed it into these studs, and now I'll go through the process of wood filling all of those holes and everything. But look how good this looks. It closes really nicely, and I'm pretty proud of myself. This is the first time I've installed a door, and I'm really happy with the results. I threw on the old handle that was here before. I haven't figured out quite exactly like which handles I want for the new house yet, but a project for another day. I don't know if you saw it a little bit earlier in the video, but when I took the ceiling down in the garage, I found tons of old wires that were not connected to anything. And turns out they were mostly for this old security system. So I cut that out and then climbed up to the attic and started removing all of the wires. And I found a ton of old DirecTV lines as well. And the crazy part is I found all of these wires up there, and I still did not have internet when I moved in here. And the scariest part is I did find a pterodactyl nest above my bedroom. I think the birds had been trying to build that for a while, and it just kept falling down, and then they rebuilt and repeated the process for a few years. So I'm gonna have to clean that out. While there's no garage ceiling, this is a great time to think about adding some storage up here. So my friend James came over and helped me get some sheets of plywood up here to make a platform for some attic storage. I'm using OSB sheets of plywood. They are $10 each, really cheap, and I threw a couple up here, and I'm pretty excited. I can store things like my Christmas tree or maybe tools up here that I don't use very often. And obviously everything up here will get really hot, so I need to make sure I'm storing stuff that is okay getting hot, but I'm pretty excited about the option to have something up here. While I was at it, I decided to install an attic ladder so it would be a lot easier to access that storage space. Previously, there was just a really small hole that you would put a ladder underneath and then just climb up through that hole. Obviously, that will not work for the attic ladder, so I had to remove some of these pieces of 2x4s so we could make a new hole for that attic ladder. The old hole was not only too small, it was also above where I want to have a workbench, and if we installed the ladder here, the ladder would have hit the workbench. So we also decided to move this hole down a little bit. We installed new 2x4s by screwing them into the rafters. It is super strong this way, and it was pretty easy. We just put one 2x4 in and then measured out exactly how big the ladder is, marked that, and then put another 2x4 on that end. I will say it turned out to be easier to have a clamp holding that 2x4, so it would be exactly in the right spot when you're screwing it in. And I definitely recommend having 2 to 3 people to help with this project because you have to lift the ladder into place, which is definitely a hard process. We put little pieces of wood on our new 2x4s that hung out a little bit so that when we got the ladder up here, it could rest on those little pieces of wood while I screwed in some temporary screws. Once I got all of those temporary screws in, I came down and removed those little pieces of wood so that we could fold the ladder down and then get some new bolts in there. They give you all the materials that you need for this project. Obviously, you just need a drill so you can put everything in. But once you get the frame up there and it's resting on those temporary screws, you need to fold down the ladder so that you can access the entire area. And they've marked out exactly where you need to put the bolts. Again, clamps are super helpful for this project as well as shims, because sometimes the gaps just don't line up perfectly, so you'll need to plug those holes with some shims. I used a drill with a little socket attachment and it went in super easy to those rafters. You will have to trim the ladder depending on how tall your ceiling is. They will give you the exact place to cut it, and to do that we used a hacksaw. And then they have these little feet attachment that you put onto the end of that cut ladder so that it is perfectly level and doesn't scratch up your ground as well. We positioned the ladder so that it would hit the bottom part of the garage floor and not be up on that step, so you have a little bit more runway when you are walking up the ladder and potentially carrying something as well. I'm really proud of how this attic ladder turned out, and it was a total happy accident. I don't know if I would have done this project if I hadn't have had to take down all of the drywall in the garage. To wrap up the first few weeks in the new house, I actually threw a combined birthday party for myself and my friend Sean. We both turned 27 within a week of each other, so we thought it'd be fun to host a really big party that kind of doubled as my housewarming party as well. Before everybody came over for dinner and a bonfire, we actually went and played broomball, which if you haven't played before, it's just like hockey, except you wear your regular shoes on the ice and you go slow, you fall a lot, but it's super, super fun. I had so much fun welcoming in this new season of life with everyone at the new house, and I'm so glad you're here with me too. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you subscribe to see all of the updates from That 70's Renovation.